Hello, this is Brian Whitten and ET Art. I wanted to come back and reassess this Egyptian parchment in relation to cycles of the planet. However, before I go on, if you are 13 or younger, I would prefer you go and get your parents or carer and have them watch the video first. If they say it's okay, then that's fine with me. Everybody else who has visited this channel before knows we have come a long way in the understanding of why the pyramids and megaliths are on our planet, and they are directly related to the cycles of the Earth around the Sun. The cycles of the Earth around the Sun are managed. They are not something that comes naturally. Those who haven't been to our channel before, or my channel, I would say to you this, that what we are told is that we once upon a time had two suns. One of the suns was hurled out of the inner solar system. When I'm talking about inner, I'm talking about two suns rotating around each other reasonably within close proximity of each other. One of them's been hurled out, which would appear to be Nibiru or Nemesis. It's another star or a dwarf star that seems to come back into our system every now and then, and I would expect its entry to our system is in actual fact a rotation around an outer planet. I believe that it does not come up and rotate around the Sun. I might show you a little later on the forecourts of the pyramids themselves where I suspect that's the case. What we're looking at when we come back to this parchment is an Egyptian parchment. I can't tell you much more than that because I freeze-framed this when I was watching, well actually it wasn't freeze-framed, I actually downloaded it from one of my groups that I'm a member of on Facebook. When we look at our parchment, and part that I want to take note of is the groups of men at the top up here, okay? Going along the top. I'll just move in a little closer to give you a closer idea. The first group here, the multiples are 4 by 11, so there's 4 legs on pointing in that direction, there is 11 in this direction. That is 44 and would be reflective, I would expect, of the very same thing we're seeing down here, of the 22 men in each of these, which is 44, and therefore being a complete cycle of 88,000 years. This, as I am saying, we're all going in this way, so we're looking ahead of our cycle here, where we're expected to go as across here and back out to the outer ring. What I wanted to bring to your attention is that it is only the first lot of group of people there that are coming up with that count. The last group over this side, the last 3, are in actual fact counts of 4 by 12, which is 48, so that means there has been a 4,000 year extra period of time in those cycles, and on this one here, which is 5 by 13, which is 65,000 years, which is an additional 21,000 years. What I wanted to bring to your attention there is these other 2 long years here. I have Google Earth on the screen at the moment. The only reason I brought that up is I wanted to talk to you about a place on the New South Wales east coast called Carryong. When I click search, it will take you into where Carryong is, and it's very, very close to where I actually found and discovered the images on the rocks in the very first place. And well, the glyphs that I'm going to show you are in this area here. You can cut off this road here and turn off this road and walk through the forest, and you get down through an area just there. And that's where all the glyphs I'm about to show you are. They're Egyptian glyphs carved into rocks. The people that run our world tell us our history that is false, and they were left there by people in the 60s. That too is a lie, as most of our history is. They were put there to tell us and warn us. There's not just the glyphs were put there. If you actually go there and have a look, you'll find the very huge, huge sandstone boulders that are there. And I mean they are huge, they are as big as my house. They've been put there. The whole lot of them have been placed up at the top of a mountain They tell a story, and there are images within them that tell you about the removal of the landmass in Central America, etc., etc. It is a very, very, very informative complex and should be left as is. And that's where it is. It's in this area here. I just wanted to show you that that was the case. The ones I want to show you at this present point, in my opinion, were these ones here are talking about the tilt of the axis. There were 3 comets that came to our planet that caused that issue, and in actual fact what it did was create the tropics. So you've got 3 dots there separate. The tropics weren't here until the planet got tilted, and it's in actual fact exactly why these glyphs are on the rock. There may be a historian that will tell you that these glyphs on this side, on the right side, the 2 over here that I want to look at, mean totally different thing than what I'm about to tell you. That's fine. I can tell you now that you do not get a lot of truth in our history on our world and this planet. We learned our Queen's English, we learned our Queen's history as well. The round circle at the bottom with the 2 lines across it, that is very, very familiar and very similar to this process here that I've already drawn for you. So when we look at this diagram here that I prepared for an earlier video, and we say that we are talking about these 2 wider rotating vertical planes of magnetism of the Sun, we're rotating clockwise this way, and the horizontal plane, the round circle, is rotating anti-clockwise. And this is, in actual fact, what drives a planet is to stand up straight. When we come into plane with the horizontal plane, it's very, very strong. So it whips the planet up straight, and those movements are 16,000 and 66,000 miles an hour. And none of us are going to live, or we'd all be killed. Every one of us would be dead. There would be very, very little life form able to live through the movement of the planet should it be allowed to hit the plane without any assistance. And I mean even animals, because the speeds of movement of the Earth's surface are very, very fast indeed. But look at that compared to our last glyph, we are looking at the same thing. We're looking at the rotating vertical planes, in my opinion. I think a lot of people on the planet, especially the ones that have been dropping the atomic weapons around our globe, are in actual fact got it wrong as such in that respect. I only wanted to show you that so you could see that the glyph itself is the same. It's 2 like this. And actually what I think they're talking about here is the Sun and its rotating vertical planes. That isn't the one I really wanted to show you before I moved on. I wanted to show you this one here. I've said in past that I thought this was telling us a recorded pole shift here. See that? Up, starting here, down and up. I wanted to show you that because I also wanted you to be aware that, and this one here that we've discussed before, that the cycle here, at the end of the cycle, that this movement in from, this is still beyond Mars at this point, so the planet's beyond Mars here, it's been laid flat like this and tilted up to obtain our change of direction of rotation. That is the end of the cycle. There is a 4,000 year off the horizontal plane, so in other words we have an axis tilt on our axis here with summer, winter and spring being able to be provided in here, very similar to the cycle we are just finishing. But that one there is 4,000 years long, i.e. 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, and we know of that. I'll show you one other thing I wanted to show you in relation to that 4,000 year cycle. The glyph I just showed you in Carry-On, that is showing us it's done 2 of those cycles in a row. It's done a 6,000 year one and a 4,000 year one of those type of cycles in the middle of the inner ring. It has to be on the middle of the inner ring of rotation here, because you're not going to do it out here. There's no planet here. There's no people living on the planet in this outer ring. It's frozen, it's cold, there's nobody there, and they tell us that in the glyphs of the here when we look at these cycles here. These cycles here tell us when they come back to lift the globe up, which is what they're doing here, lifting the globe. There's nobody here to meet them on either of these cycles, both in and out to the outer ring, because there's nobody on the globe when they come to lift it back up. The laying down of the globe to get it out beyond is stood back up again. It would not stand up on its own, and it tells you that's because in actual fact if you laid the globe down through letting atomic bombs off or trying to do whatever the hell they try to do to tilt the axis a little bit, that it's not going to straighten up on its own. In other words, when it's laid down and let go out, if it wasn't stood up, it would just keep going. This is another lesson we get. But both these cycles here, when they lift the globe up, there's nobody on the planet. No life exists because it is cold, frozen, and we are living on Mars. This is what this is telling us. I've brought us back to Google Earth just for a minute to discuss the planet's precession. For those of you who, there may be some of you who do not know what that is, we have a tilt on our axis, and thankfully we do, because if we didn't have, we would not have the seasons. If we did not have the seasons, our food and many of the animals would not know when to breed and they would die out. Effectively, that is one of the problems we've discussed. The precession, if I said the 1st of July every year it's like this, and if it stayed in the same place, we wouldn't have a precession, it would be the same. But the precession is that on the 1st of July, when we are looking at our planet tilted that way, in actual fact it moves. So in other words, every 1st of July it would be slowly this way or slowly that way, depending on which way the precession moved. That wobble, to complete a full cycle, would be 27,000 years. That's what it is calculated to be. I also expect that to be reflective to tell us that the cycle prior to us on plane with the sun is a 27-hour day. I've widened my camera angle here deliberately to get my globe into the picture, as we were getting told when we were moved in here. This is where we move in from the outer ring of rotation. We are told this is the end of the cycle or the start of another cycle, in that we are an off-plane 4,000 year cycle from here to here. It takes multiple impacts to get us in, which is how we know that the situation is that this is off-plane here. We know this is on-plane because the Earth is moved in a manner like this, and that can only happen when the core is locked by the horizontal plane of the sun. The reason I come back here though is I want you to look and be aware of what we're seeing here in the way they tell us people are put back on the planet here from Mars. Right? Because you cannot live out here. And this is still beyond Mars here. So people are coming back here and being put back on the planet. Now I want you to be aware of what we're being told that they are put back on in the sequence, totally opposite than the comet struck the planet. The first people to be put back on are Asians. That sort of cart is associated with an Asian continent, and a sulky is where that is. So if I look at my globe and put us right here, we're right here. Asia above Australia. So we're in this placement of these people, we're on the last comet impact. The next ones we're told are the Egyptians are put back on here. This being a mummy or a body wrapped in going on here. We spin the globe this way, it's exactly half. We've gone back now to the second impact, the Mediterranean. Down here we see a llama being put on here at the end of the cycle, or towards the end of the cycle. Llamas are associated with South America. We spin back around here and we're now back at the first impact site. So in actual fact they've put people on the planet in exactly the opposite location than the comets that they've landed on the Earth to move it. So we ask ourselves why? Why does this exist? Why do they do that and put the people back on the planet in the exact opposite sequence that they let the comets tilt the planet? We must ask ourselves then, why then do they do such a thing? Why do they hit the planet at the very same locations but put the people back on the planet from Mars in the very opposite manner, in exactly the same lines of longitude. It was not to tell us where to let atomic bombs off in a hope to tilt the axis. It was there to tell us what criteria we had to meet when they came back. In other words, half the population. So if, in other words, more than half the population of the globe, which is why they divide the land masses in half here, it's got nothing to do with where to bomb this thing to try and tilt the thing or do whatever. It was to do with us, the population of Earth. It's the population of Earth is getting divided in half here. It is the land masses we live on. And you guys thought this was where you had to bomb the Earth. My God, what have you done? We can then sit here and say, well, what part are we above 50% brain or below? Personally, I would see below. But where I see in their message and the rocks and everything, I see that we have just crossed and just made it over the line. I'll show you why. So then, to understand what we've just been told, we look at the parchment and the same thing again exists here. We're talking about half the population. We know that there is no people living on Earth in the outer ring. So in this instance, they're representing somebody else, aren't they? What they're doing is representing half the population here. Once again, the same thing. So when we see this inserted glyph and understand what we're seeing, the half loop cycle that we're shown that rotates our planet's plane like so, it's going to do exactly the same thing again. So in other words, up here where we see a period of time that is extending by 4,000 years, you're seeing a 4,000 year cycle be tacked onto the 6,000 year off-plane cycle immediately. So in other words, when we come down here to where we want their help heading towards the plane of the sun, if they weren't going to do it, we wouldn't be here having this discussion. There would be no reason for the parchment. They would already know the outcome of the percentage of people at the time they were going to come here. So that is why I'm saying I believe we are above the 50% mark, therefore we are worth saving, and they're not going to send our planet on yet another loop of the one we've just done, which would, if it's only 4,000 years, within 2,000 years, well, it would be less than 1 billion people. That would be the situation. We would all die out, and both poles cop many hours of both, many months of full sun. So that is what goes down there, and full dark for that matter. So that is why I believe the situation here is telling us that. Now the only other sequence is this last one here, which is 5 by 13, which is 65. The 65,000 years is then putting another 21,000 years in full on the inner ring of rotation. There was no purpose for it to be out here, nobody's living here. So it will be a purpose led by the decisions we make here. In other words, the offering of moving of land and the removal of water will be what defines that 65,000 year cycle, in that we've added another full 21 years. I would expect it would be a mix of either 16,000 years on plane with the sun and a 5,000 year off plane cycle. Once again, it's difficult to know, but I would expect that that be the case. But certainly the 48, which is only 4,000 years more, would be an off-plane cycle added to the cycle, the 6,000 year cycle that's already here. Now we'll discuss why it is our planet is allowed to go through this process, even though it rotates and moves and goes through the horizontal plane twice every year, because that is a question that a lot of people ask me. I will go through and do my best to explain it right now. I know we're getting a bit of glare in the room here, but for what we're doing I think we'll probably get by. Probably the easiest way for me to explain how this happens. When I say that the Earth is knocked off the horizontal plane of the Sun, which is represented by the flat round disc here, probably the easiest way for me to explain it is that if when that happens, and if I was talking about a plate and I hold this up in front of you and say, okay, well this is Earth's plane, okay, so it's knocked off, it doesn't just get knocked off so that it slowly over 6,000 years moves like so, right? And that plane of travel for 6,000 years goes around like this. That's a Merry Christmas plate, Merry Christmas. It's not just that happens, right? The other 10 degrees tilt that we're seeing on the axis this way, being recorded at the eastern and western Mastaba fields, we're also recording a movement from this perspective here. So in other words, the plate is not just being twisted, or the axis or the plane is not just being twisted this way, but it's being twisted this way as well. Okay, and I believe the twist this way is only 5 degrees. So that this plane here, or our planet's plane, has not just been tilted, it's been twisted that way 5 degrees as well. And that is why, from that point in time, the plane of travel of the planet is never picked up by the horizontal plane. It's because that one has been tilted off 5 degrees at the very same process. And that is where the precession of the planet comes in, and that is where we are there getting our 6,000 years, because we are seeing this plane of travel, if it was the Earth, not just move this way, but move this way as well. And that is why we're seeing it picked up again here, because when it comes back round here, it's back on a plane like this. And as soon as it's like that, in line with the plane, it will be picked up. Otherwise that angle is opposite like this. Right? And that's why it doesn't get picked up. So this is why that situation happens. It's this plane, the plane that's rotating in that direction, that gets picked up and managed by, or picked up eventually by, the horizontal plane of the Sun. That's probably the easiest way to explain it, and why it does it in 6,000 years is because if the entire precessional period is that long, it only takes a quarter of the time. Which is why I also believe they're also showing us, when they put the people back on the planet, another reason why they divide half of the globe both ways. It's nothing to do with Earth, whether it was on any particular line of longitude. It could have been any longitude. Latitude, on the other hand, would have been another story. Latitude ones would appear to be required to tilt the axis at exactly the same and right place. So, like I said, I could be wrong there, but I'm certainly would expect that being exactly the case. It's the horizontal plane, or our horizontal plane, that's been shifted as well, and it just rotates like that slowly until it's done a quarter of the cycle and it picks up. So the difference between our 4,000 and 6,000 years would be then more likely when this plane is shifted. It is not shifted 5 degrees, but it's shifted 10, or a varying degree in that instance, should they want to shorten the time that it takes to come back and latch in with the plane, because that would do it exactly that. If that plane is shifted 10 degrees, it therefore greatly reduces the time before the plane comes back up in line with this plane here. And that may be how they do that. They may twist this initially the 20 degrees or 24 degrees, that one, straight away, as opposed to allowing it to move. Before I actually move on, I'll just say that in South America, when I was a young boy in a Christian Brothers school in Gosford on the central coast of Australia, one of the books I found on the library had about the elongated skull people from South America, the Paracas. People these days are trying to say, official say that it's they're boarded or head boarding or whatever. Honestly, the book I had in my school told us that they were alive and well at the time the Spanish got there, and they were eradicated. So it's a wonder how our history books do change, I can assure you that. I wanted to come back here because I said to you that we were looking at these 3 individuals here carrying this rock, being very, very predictive of the requirement for them to move land masses off and away from the equator. And when we look at the water, it's lower. So I said also that the water was going to be moved from the planet from the South Pole. They are representing carrying water like this, not like a ewer on their shoulder, which is what they also could be doing. So I would, like I said, think that reflective of exactly that, and that this is the angle of axis we need. At that point, with the water in the planet, this high-speed rotation is going to be a lot less. It's going to speed the globe up, yes, but it's not going to cause the problems that would have normally have caused. And I would expect just the lower tides that they'll manage that this is what they're saying they need to do prior, right? Because this is where we cross the plane of the sun. And I said to you, if I was going to tell you how far away it was, I would think we're talking 6 months there. If we stop and look at this inserted image again, like I said, it says 17, and it had changed. It was 4 originally in Roman numerals. This inserted image is the very same rock, in the very same location. It was a very unusual thing that I've had to go through learning all this, and it's not something I expected to be doing, I can assure you that. I come up here to renovate a house. I've done that. I did not expect to be sitting here making videos about the planet and how it moves around the sun. It is very, very, very unusual thing to have happened to anybody, let alone when it happens to yourself, you know. So this is what I'm seeing. We're looking at 6 months here, and I would believe the 17 not just be reflective of 17 months from the day that I worked that out, which was pretty much July last year, was 111 years and 1 day since the Tunguska event. It was what made me understand a lot more of what was going down. Now I think we've come a long, long way since then, but in reality I see here that if we're told 17 months, this is saying that this is 6 months. It needs to have 6 months to do this. So if reality is 1st of July, 1/7, 1st of July, so, and that's 6 months away from the crossing of the plane of the sun, which I calculated would be in December 20th or 24th of December. But that's what I would think that is. That's 6 months. So the 1st of the 7th would be the number 17 on this rock. So I don't know. I've tried to work that out from all sorts of things, but I would see that being very reflective of that. One other matter just before we finish off that I wanted to explain for those that are people involved with astrophysics or planetary science and motion of the Earth through the solar system, as they tell us, when Earth is out in the outer ring here, the period of time that it takes Earth to go from there to there on the inner ring, the same time is reflected out here. So in other words, when our mass of our Earth is out here, natural fact goes from there to there at the same time that Earth goes from here to here. The result is the mass out here is moving, well, twice as quick, even quicker than it is on the inner ring of rotation. Its mass is moving here very, very, very quickly. Not just in speed of rotation of the Earth's mass on its axis, but the entire mass of Earth moving through space far quicker in the outer ring. The reason I wanted to mention that to you is that we are told in the off-plane cycle in this outer ring here, this cycle here that I marked with an X, that cycle, that the axis of the Earth and the precession that we spoke of that just gave us the ability to only have 6,000 years on the inner ring, the precession is shown out here to complete. It is shown to be doing a full circle, which means it goes past the angle of capture at least 4 times within that period. It has to. It's impossible for the precession to complete and the angle not to be hit with a 6,000 year cycle. The reason why they are telling us this out here, that it doesn't get captured in the outer, is it's obviously not the strength of the planet. We're moving twice as quick. It's not the lessening of the beams or the magnetic pull of the sun or whatever. The fields are the same. so it's moving quicker. The reason is it is doing that, it's moving quicker, that quick, and over that speed that the 200 kilometre wide, even the 200 kilometre wide horizontal band of magnetism is unable to capture it. That out here, the issue is that it is the velocity of the mass of Earth travelling through there that does not allow that to be captured in the outer ring of rotation. Listen, I think we'll finish up there today. I was going to show you some rocks again. I think I might make that for another video and just do the rocks on their own, because there was some really fantastic imagery, but the sun's come up, and once again this video's taken a lot longer to produce than I thought. I hope it's been valuable information. I hope that you understand, as I have, this has been really quite an amazing thing to have to learn, to come to terms with, to understand, and to realise what is about to transpire, because it's not what I got taught. And I did do ancient history at school, and I can't remember getting any of these lessons, and I didn't wag school, so I must have missed a few lessons there somewhere along the line. Listen, this is Brian Whitten and ET Art. Have a nice day. Thank you very much. Bye bye.